Hi everyone, and welcome to this full real-time demo in Soft Pastel. Every so often I try to release a tutorial in its full form to you guys here on YouTube, and I hope that you will enjoy this little demo of a hand. If you do enjoy this, then please do subscribe here on YouTube, and do take a look throughout all of my other playlists for lots more videos just like this one. And then if you want even more, visit me on Patreon, where you'll find my full library of real-time tutorials and lots more. I've been painting people studies this month, and I thought it would be fun to do some hand studies. Hands are notoriously difficult, but I've always enjoyed drawing and painting them, especially just sitting sketching my own left hand. So I decided to do a couple of studies of hands in action. The first one here is actually my own right hand, and that's lovely Unison OB4 that I'm holding. Now, if you'd like to work along with me on this study, you can find this real-time tutorial over on my Patreon. But for the second hand demo, I'm going to create this hand playing a guitar chord, and that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. So here's what you'll need if you'd like to work along with me. I'm going to make the full resolution version of the photo reference available on my Patreon. So you don't have to sign up, you can simply go there and download this. I'll put the link in my description. I'm working on pastel matte paper. It's the buttercup yellow colour, and my little demo is only 6 by 8 inches. And here are the colours I used on screen now. As always with my tutorials, you don't have to have exactly the same materials or colours as me. You should try to substitute for something close in your own collection where possible. So let's make a start. So something that I'm going to add in just quickly before I make a start. I toyed with the idea of just leaving the entire background of this blank, but it kind of makes the hand look as though it's floating, a bit disconnected. So I've decided to include a hint of the arm disappearing off to the side. And my next decision was to decide on the colour of the background, because I had kind of envisioned something dark for this. And you can see in the photo reference the sleeve itself is dark, so I'm thinking just a hint of the sleeve looming out of the darkness, and to make the background itself quite dark too. So I've just been looking out some colours for the background, and yeah, just to give myself a hint of where I want that arm to slightly loom out of the dark background. So let's get the overall background colour blocked in. I'm going to go with a dark Terry Ludwig. This is a popular Terry Ludwig colour. This is the eggplant colour, or V100. And I do like some Terry Ludwigs in my work because they are intense colours, is how I would describe them. They are extremely strong in pigment, and for the dark colours especially, I really like to make use of them. So I'm just going to quickly block in this whole area. So it's going to be fun to create the guitar, and I know that the guitar is also quite a dark colour, and so I've got to be sure that it comes out of the dark background just enough as well. But I quite like the idea of the hand here being the star, and for it to be a bit brighter than everything else and to really jump out towards us. I quite like that idea. So yeah, let's give the dark, moody background a try. I figured because I did my hand portrait with the white or cream colour that your sheet of paper might be. So as an artist, it feels like you're starting from nothing, from blank paper. And then I suppose for music,
It's a very similar kind of creative process, but I know a lot of musicians tend to favour nighttime, tend to favour the dark time to be more creative. So yeah, I kind of thought it might fit nicely for the artist one to work more with the light side, and for the musician to, I suppose, call upon their dark side maybe to make music. Anyway, I thought it would make a nice contrast between the two hand studies. And I really enjoy a hand study because your hands say so much about you. They're quite an important part of a portrait if they are involved. And it's been really fun actually to just zoom in on hands alone for these studies, because quite often when I'm painting hands in a bigger portrait, I won't spend as long on each hand. It won't be quite as detailed a study of their hands. It will have a little bit less detail within the overall picture. But with these little hand studies, I'm really getting to indulge a little bit on all of the lovely details that you get on fingers and thumbs. So I can let some of that dark background come in over my sleeve area. So if you get a lot of excess dust like this, you might want to just give your easel a little tap from behind, and you can have that dust just fall into the channel below. Or you can take your piece outside and give it a good tap on the back. I normally let most of the dust just settle at the bottom here, and most of it can just get rubbed in anyway. It'll get covered over by the next layers of pastel. So I'm going to come in with some black. This is a black new pastel stick. So I really want the arm to fade back into the blackness. I'm not sure that the dark background is the correct choice yet. We'll find out. But I like the idea, even though the guitar neck is pretty dark, it's a dark brown, there's sunlight on it, so to me I can really bring out the sunlight that's hitting the guitar and make both it and the hand really stand out from the dark background. Hopefully that's what happens. So I'm just getting all the dark stuff blocked in behind the guitar first. Just want to give a little hint at some light picking out the creases on the arm here. So I'm really applying that black quite thickly. I can just afford to get most of this area covered in. So I have no idea how long this is going to take actually, because the hand I'm pretty sure I know how long I'm going to spend on that. But the guitar, that's another thing. I haven't painted a guitar neck before, and I feel like there's probably a pretty good reason why I haven't painted a guitar neck before. And this is just a small slice of it, but I'm imagining that if I want to get the strings bright against the darkness of the wood, and then each string is casting a dark shadow as well, and I really want to try and capture that. So yeah, I feel like I'll probably spend as long on the guitar as I do on the hand in the end, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm not sure that I'm going to leave it just like flat dark colour in the background. I'm just adding a bit of darker shadow around the edges of it here. I may well come back in here with a bit more colour, who knows. But for now I'm seeing it as pretty dark. So I'm going to pick up a different type of dark purple. This is my Unison, and I'm going to try and pick out the shapes of the highlights that are on the sleeve here. So a lot of the work will be done in the blending stage. I'm just getting a bit of colour laid down, and then I'll soften it in with my fingertip. And then the lovely thing with soft pastel is you can come back in with your darks. So although I work generally from dark to light, of course I can also come back in with my darks and strengthen those again. And I think perhaps I'll try a little bit of the dark brown that I'm going to use on the guitar. I just want to bring a bit more dark tone colour into the sleeve. It looks very flat with just the black and the purple. So yeah, just trying out a little bit of a dark Terry Ludwig, more of a dark blue-grey, but I think I prefer the purple tone that I was using, so I'm going to scrap that one. So I'm still deciding on the colours really, although I do pick out a palette of colours to get me going. That can change as I progress. And just bringing a little bit of the dark Terry Ludwig colour into the darkest shadow as well. You can see, well, perhaps you can't see on camera, but this Terry Ludwig dark eggplant colour is almost darker than black. It's weird how strong this pigment is, how solidly it applies. So I'm not going to do too much more to this sleeve. Sometimes these background elements that you want to have less detail, well, sometimes you're finished before you realise, because it's in moving on and getting some of the detailed things in, it can really bring those background elements together. Where they didn't look finished before, all of a sudden they look very finished once you get the foreground elements in. So yeah, I just wanted the sleeve to be subtly there because I think it would look strange without it being there at all. So that is my decision, to bring it in even though it's very dark. I think it's better than leaving it out. So we'll see if it's the right decision by the end. I can always come back and lift a bit more highlight in this if I want to, if I need to, towards the end. You know, I can come back in and strengthen some of the brighter spots on the sleeve here. But yeah, I'm reluctant to do too much of that. So yeah, let's make a start on the guitar, because that might just take me days, who knows. And I'm not completely sure how I'm going to approach it yet. But I'm thinking to get the background colour of the guitar at least blocked in and worry about the strings later. I'm going to try and leave... I actually used a ruler when I was drawing this out, just to give me a precise line on the paper, and then when it comes to freehand them, I'll have these hopefully still a little bit visible as guides, but it's going to be tricky. So I just paused for a little moment there to strengthen my lines of the strings again, because I really don't want to lose those. And what I want to do next is to kind of logically think of this guitar from background to foreground. So the first thing I'm going to block in is the actual neck itself, the wooden neck. And that's with quite a dark brown. I'm quite likely to lose where my strings are and where all the little divisions are, so I don't want to lose all of that at this stage. So I'm just quickly sketching back in some of the important shapes so that I can still see my lines. And sometimes in the sketching stages, if there is something that has a very straight edge, like a windowsill, or in this case the guitar itself, then I will come in and use a ruler to give myself that guideline, and then my freehand line still looks natural, hopefully, but I've got the guide there that is accurate. So the colour that I'm going to lay down first for the brown tone is BE6, and this is quite a dark brown. So I think what's going to be tricky is the light and shade running right across the guitar, because with the strings on top it becomes complicated, and you've got each string casting a shadow. Goodness, I've really given myself a task and a half here. This could be the first and only guitar neck that I ever attempt. Who knows? Or I really fall in love with creating the detail on it. We'll see. So I'm pretty much running it down this edge, this top edge of the guitar neck as best as I can, and trying to avoid the little metal pieces here on the frets. and trying to avoid putting too much of the dark brown where the strings should go. So it's not going to be possible to completely avoid those areas. The brown pastel is going to run straight through. And that's fine because my lighter colours will go on top, but you do also want to give them a chance to stand out as best as they can. I'll just do the same at the bottom, just get the outer edges of the guitar blocked in at least. So straight edges aren't always easy to make in soft pastel. It's not like having the precision of a pencil, or at least something with a sharp point, but there's so much you can do with the pigment once you have it on the paper. So you don't have to get it on there perfect first time. I can go out over the edge here a little bit, and it's quite easy for me to come back in with the background colour. So whichever side it's easier to create the crisp edge from. So that's at least the top and bottom part. I can see the width of the neck here. And now we've also got some really dark shadows. Maybe it's a good idea for me to try and get those in, because I'm wanting to do the darker shadows on the fretboard using my very dark background colour. And so that's going to be the shadow that we've got just here for the thumb. So this edge here becomes pretty dark. So yeah, I think the sunlight is also what's going to make this extra tricky, because you've got the frets and the neck of the guitar and the strings all dipping in and out of light and shade. And of course, that's probably why I'm painting this, because it's the play of light and shade that really attracts me to paint something. But yeah, sometimes it does give you quite a challenge, and I think this is going to be. So I'm just trying to run the Terry Ludwig underneath the string, run it right across underneath where the string is. So I've just about managed to leave a tiny gap of paper where the string will go. Doesn't matter if I cover over it a little bit, but as I said, I want those to look a good bit brighter. So it's quite tricky to get small detail and precision with the Terry Ludwigs. They're quite chunky, they're quite soft, and such an amount of pigment comes off them. They're really strongly pigmented. So the other strong shadow over on this side of the finger, what I'm going to do quickly is just have another quick look at the outline here of my finger. We've got a lot of foreshortening happening on the fingers, which is always interesting. So yeah, I'm really hopeful that the brightness of the hand, that all the highlights in this piece will really bring it to life towards the end. But we're going to be a while in the darkness really, because it's the dark colours that I want to get blocked in first. And I just want to be careful at the top of this fingernail here. You can see that I've covered that area already with quite dark pigment. And I want to just get that outlined and make sure that I avoid adding any more dark pigment in there, or it's going to be quite difficult to get this fingernail and the tip of the fingernail to really shine out, because that should be quite bright in front of what's behind it. So I am a bit careful about filling the paper with dark pigment, especially in the areas where I know that later on that's going to be a highlight. But on the whole, I am pretty full on with my dark colours when I first come in with them. I always get a lot of comments saying, oh, you went so dark at the beginning, and then I was really surprised when that it looked right by the end. But I'm really relying on these dark colours to create the contrast that I build on top of then for the rest of the painting. So this is a vital part of it for me. So normally I wouldn't be so fussy about the pigment going over other areas, but when it's these dark Terry Ludwigs, they are so heavily pigmented, and I really want to give the strings and the frets a chance to jump out of the dark colour that I'm putting on here. So I'm trying to put it on more thickly where I want it, and just be careful to not completely cover over the strings and the frets, so it's a little bit delicate. And I'm just trying to get the shadows on the fretboard blocked in first. And this one kind of comes down. This is being cast from the middle finger and makes a lovely shape coming down the fretboard to the bottom. But yeah, it's difficult to be precise with the Terry Ludwig. That's why it's good that I'm using it in the lower layers, because all the precision comes with the next layers on top. So don't worry so much if your first layer looks a total mess. You're probably on the right track if that's the case. First layers should usually look a bit of a mess. So have we got more shadows, of course, for the strings. Let's see if I can get a little bit more in for the strings. And also we've got a shadow coming down the left side of each fret as well. So it's going to look such a mess doing it with the Terry Ludwig here, but I just want to get a little bit of this really dark pigment in for these shadows. So the shadow of this string is actually quite far away from the string. There's even a little gap of brown in between the shadow and the string. That is going to be fun to squeeze it in there. But let's see how we get on. But this, as I said, is the pastel that I've got the least amount of precision with, so I'm getting this colour in first, and then I worry about getting it into the right places and fixing up the edges with other colours that I can use more precisely. Even some pastel pencil, I'm pretty sure I'll pick up some pencils throughout this. Again, there's a little gap between the shadow and the string. Just doesn't matter if these look perfect or not. You'll see in just a bit how I shape these areas using the lighter colours. So the bits of shadow should get smaller, just like the strings themselves. What an annoying extra detail to think about on a guitar, as if it wasn't difficult enough with this many frets and strings to worry about, but the fact that the guitars change width as well, you get finer strings at the bottom. So now I just want to block in the other parts of the neck of the guitar, and I can just begin to shape those shadows using this brown. I'm still trying to leave some little hint of where the string should go, even if it's just a tiny little slither of paper that I haven't completely covered. So now obviously this looks incredibly dark at the minute, but this is the the first layer, so my first layer usually looks pretty dark. And I'm just trying to fill in each little rectangular shape between the strings and the frets. And that's really what makes this so tricky. You've got so many divisions cutting up the neck of the guitar. Okay, so before I add the lighter frets, I'd like to bring in a little bit of the lighter colour that I can see running through the wood of the neck of the guitar. So BE6, that dark brown that I blocked in with, it's a little bit dark for the overall colour of the neck. So I'm just bringing in some brown earth colours and some red earth colours even. Just to break up the darker brown. Then I can think a little bit about the grain of the wood, I suppose, when I'm adding this colour over. So I'll just come back in and strengthen some of the shadows that I've started to lose here. And also to add the shadow for these frets, I forgot about them. And I think I'm gonna break this Terry Ludwig. And that's gonna give me some sharp edges. That's gonna help a lot here, possibly. So I think now that I've got most of the guitar neck blocked in at least, perhaps I can get the frets on. That's probably the first extra bit to add. So yeah, I just want to lighten a few little areas of the wood grain. Easier to do this now before I've added in frets and strings, and suddenly there are obstacles for me. So if I can just get a few lighter colours dotted through the wood, just to pick out the warmer colours of the wood. So yeah, the frets and the strings are going to be tricky. I'm using a little piece of A27 here just to map out the shapes of each fret. And then I can start to use pastel pencil at any point to fine-tune things. So each little strip of shadow comes across the guitar and runs over the top of the frets. So the strings are casting a shadow that comes up and across each little fret, because it's quite a 3D little piece of metal that sits up from the neck of the guitar. So at this point I'm using black pastel pencil here, but what I'm really doing, rather than adding black, I'm kind of scraping away and I'm covering my dark Terry Ludwig colour again, or I can just simply pick it up again and start to strengthen the shadow line as it comes across and up and over the next fret. So I'm really just looking at the pattern made by the shadows, and as I progress I can start to tweak things and move the pigment around a little. So if you're wondering how I'm going to get any precision in this, because the guitar neck is quite a precise thing to try and replicate, and I will pick up pastel pencils along the way to help me with the details. So I'm looking at the frets where they are in the sunlight, and I'm blocking them in using A27, just a kind of neutral, warm colour that I can come in and add some highlights on top of to make the metal look shiny. So if you come in with a really bright colour for the metal bits, it won't allow you to add extra highlights to make those metal bits look shiny. So you've got to look for the darkest colour that you can see on the object really first. Get that dark colour down, and that leaves you some space to work with your tonal values. If you come in too bright too soon, then it really gives you nowhere else to go. You've got nothing else you can add on top if you come in with your brightest colours first. So I'm leaving the shadow areas of the frets for now. I'm just getting the brighter sections of it blocked in. So the shadow of each string goes right over the top of the frets. And that's what I'm just trying to create first of all. So I've kind of gone into silent mode here while I'm just working on the little frets. I'm working on the frets and the shadows of the strings, so no strings just yet. The strings will have to go on top of this. And it is incredibly tricky because so many straight lines. A guitar fretboard is a pretty precise looking thing. And of course I'm working freehand here, so long straight lines are never easy to create. So I'm sure it won't be exact. I'm hoping I can get it close enough to look the part at least, but I'm sure it will not be exact. I don't mind if it's only a slightly wonky looking guitar, that's fine, but we'll see how close I can get this to looking good. As I said, never tried a guitar neck before, a fretboard, and well, I can see why. So at the minute I'm really just being lazy using my black here. I may come over the top of these shadows with a bit more colour again. It's just very tricky to get these precise enough using just the Terry Ludwig. So I've got that eggplant colour down and kind of strengthening it and the shape of it, strengthening the shape of it with the pastel pencil. So I'll make use of a little bit of brown pastel pencil as well. Just trying to shape the shadows that the strings are creating. And each little shadow comes up and over the fret. So I'm trying to get that little up and over each time with the shadow. So I may try and add a little bit of light coming down some of these frets now, just to get a little more done to them before I start cutting through all of that with the strings. And I'm hoping that if I can do the strings well enough, that it should tighten up the whole thing. So I may even turn my painting around to work on the strings, we'll see. So just a bit of white pastel pencil coming down the fret, adding a little slither of highlight, and then I switch to a light yellow as we come closer to the bottom here. So just using the darkness behind here to try and shape the top edge of the guitar and the fret. So just that little section on the right of the frets, and then allowing the frets to disappear into the shadow here where the shadow cuts across. So I'm going much darker in the shadow here on the fret. I'm using browns on the fret and here. You really need to get that contrast between light and shade. That's what I'm trying to capture here. So I'm just going to work my way across the frets. I think that's the way to go. Just tackle one thing at a time. But I think I know for sure now that I probably won't be creating any very large portraits that include a full guitar anytime soon, because wow, that would take a long time. Just this small amount of fretboard. I feel like I'm going to be dreaming of fretboards after painting just this tiny little section of one. Now, if it was a portrait where the guitar was further away from us, that might not be so bad, because there will be a certain distance away where you can't really see every string on the guitar. So actually you could create a less detailed fretboard, but it depends on the scale, really. It depends on the scale of the guitar in the reference, the scale that you decide to paint in. So the bigger that you paint, maybe you can fit in more detail. But if the guitar is quite small within the composition, there are definitely ways you could paint this with a little bit less detail. Because we're close up here and I want to do a very detailed hand, well, I thought, why not? Let's have a go at a detailed guitar. So I'm just really looking at the brightness of each little section of reflected light as we come down each fret. And I've crossed over into pastel pencil territory here. For the time being, I think for all of the smaller work on the guitar, like the frets and the strings, I've really got to rely a bit more on the pencils. It's just too ridiculous not to. So fiddly business, definitely fiddly business. And I'm picking up more and more pastel pencils as the time goes on. Bits of quite neutral colours of pencil though. I've got greys and browns, black and white, a peachy sort of colour. It's really just to like this to come in and shape things, start to tweak at the shape of each little bit of the fret. And I'm using the peach colour first. Just as a nice warm colour for the frets, because they're not really like steely, cold blue colours. They're reflecting a lot of warmth, I think, from the light around them. So metal can reflect a lot of different colours, and I'm just choosing to go with a slightly warm tone. I used my A27 to block in the shapes of the frets because I get a lot more strength of pigment from the big sticks. But then this is quite a similar colour of pastel pencil, and I can come in and really shape the pigment that I've already put on. So I'm adding very little using my pastel pencil here. I'm more just like shaping what I already put on. So apologies for the lack of chat, but I'm pretty much holding my breath a lot of the time, just trying to get straight lines. Oh goodness, straight lines. But yeah, okay, frets. We've got some frets at least. And they're by no means perfect, but I'm always happy when I get something at least like blocked in and starting to take shape, because then I know I can work at it, you know, I know I can tweak at it. There's nothing worse than the blank paper staring at you. So if you're apprehensive about painting something, just get some colours on there, get going, and then when you've got a basis of something, you can at least work on that. It's always much more daunting to make a start on the blank paper. So I'm happy that at least I've got what looks like an empty fretboard without any strings. We've got these ghostly shadows waiting for the strings. And as I said, I'm probably not going to get the frets and the strings to look perfect, because that's just going to be so tricky. So I'll do the best I can, try and neaten them up as I go. Just working on the fret that's coming down into the shadow here. Can really afford to let that one be quite dark. Barely visible in there, and just picking out a little bit of reflected light down one side of it. So I've picked up a lighter brown of pastel pencil. This is quite a red earth kind of brown. And I'm just going to neaten up the shadows and the bits of wood in between. Just try to straighten up some of my edges again. It's incredibly hard to make lots of straight parallel lines. And I think if I get it relatively close, it will do the job. So just lightening little bits of the wood now, which will also help some of the darker shadows stand out against the wood a little bit. I can also use the pencil to bring in a little hint of some wood grain. Just crisping up the edge of some shadows. Where I lighten the wood, the brown parts of the wood, I can enhance the contrast between that and the shadows. And that's what I'm doing there with the shadow from the thumb. So yeah, the pastel pencils really are great for neatening up, adding those smaller details that are just impossible with the bigger sticks. So don't be afraid to use a bit of pastel pencil when you need to. So still just the shadows of the strings, no strings. I'm getting there. The strings are definitely next on my to-do list. But before adding those in, I just want to get most of the work done on the actual guitar. And then I can hopefully cleanly add some strings over the top. But it's best if I get most of this tweaking and fiddling about here done before I add the final strings on. So yeah, this colour of pastel pencil pretty good at just helping me to highlight some bits of the wood grain especially, and to help my darker shadows stand out a little more. I'm also just making this shadow a little bit thinner because I'm remembering that the strings, as we come down the guitar neck, get thinner, and therefore their shadows would get thinner too. So there's just so much to think about on a guitar, and if you want it to look very precise, that's a lot of work. But yeah, that starts to look a bit neater. I'll do the same over here, and then I'm going to have a crack at adding the strings on. And of course we've got our little diamond shapes as well. Haven't forgotten about those. They'll probably go on now before the strings. See if I've got any tooth left on the paper to accept those marks. So yeah, this is a bit of an experiment. But it's something I've always wanted to try and paint. I'm surrounded by guitars all the time. A lot of musician friends, my partner's a guitarist, And I always like the looks, the different looks of the different makes of guitar. This is an acoustic guitar. Very beautiful instruments usually. But I think I will probably resist future temptations to paint them. I'll just look at them and listen to them. Okay, so I think I will have a crack at some guitar strings. Okay, perhaps I'll give myself a little bit of an outline, just an idea, so that I don't make a complete mess of my brown areas. Just get a bit of an outline going. And we've got another one popping up here, so just trying to make sure stuff like this is relatively well lined up. And then 2 more over here. So the diamond shape disappears behind the string. And here's the tricky thing. The shadow goes over it, so we can see some of this little diamond shape in the shadow, but it actually goes behind the string. So there's a lot of complexity in the fretboard of a guitar. Lots of straight lines, lots of things overlapping. And this diamond just comes down beyond the shadow a little bit. So I'm using a green colour now. I think that the inlay on this guitar is Avalon. So just trying to use generally the right colour for that. I'll be doing well just to get these to look like diamonds in the right place, let alone getting some texture of the Avalon in there. That's just asking too much. So I'm just painting them in as solid diamonds first. Oops, and we've got a broken pencil lead. So I'm just trying to lean heavily there, as you could hear, and trying to do the little cut-in shapes now for the diamonds. And I could be doing with sharpening my lead again, because the pencil breaking has just made it go a bit blunt. So yeah, let's get the lead sharpened again. So yeah, taking into account that bit of shadow just running through it. And again here, shadow cutting through. So I'm just coming back in. I've put the pigment in there using a bigger stick, but then I'm coming back in and just shaping the edges of it, dragging the shadow line through it. And just generally using the point of my pencil to shape these. So yeah, that's starting to look not too bad. But it's really one of those things that I could probably spend hours just fine-tuning the guitar. Definitely isn't easy to rush. So I'm just picking out one or two little flashes of light on the Avalon. So I'm just having another look at everything before I commit to adding these strings over the top. I've left a little bit of a channel most of the way across where the strings are going to go. It's not completely, hopefully not completely saturated with pastel already, so that I can add the strings with some hope of getting them to look almost precise. So my hopes are not high. I am preparing myself for the fact that it just could end up a mess. Certainly now that I see how difficult frets and shadows of strings are, I'm guessing the strings are not going to be so easy either. So yeah, I think I'm going to turn the painting around like this, and at least that will allow me to come down the ways vertically to create some of the strings, and I think just to get them started that might help. So the first one that I'm going to do the small string at the bottom here, and I'm going to bring in a ruler to help me get at least one of them placed, because just to stop everything from going slightly wonky, I just want to get at least one of them placed, especially this little fine string at the bottom. And I think it's going to help me to get one line in here just so that something looks precise. And I'm using a lighter mid-grey pastel pencil. It may not be bright enough, but I think it might be, because this little string is actually quite grey toned, not as bright as the top strings are. And I'm using the pastel pencil for this string because it's really quite thin. And I think just because I have the ruler on there at the moment, I just want to pick out a little bit of light coming down the string, and I'm going to use a lighter grey for that. Just ever so softly over the top of that. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think at least these two top really thin strings, it might be good to get those on there with a bit more precision. So yeah, let's do the next one. So I've added a little mark all along here to make sure that I've got the strings spaced how they actually are. It's very, very tricky to keep track of all of the spacing of the lines and keeping everything parallel. And then also I've got to consider the fact that he's pressing the strings actually does have a little bit of an effect. So they're not just running in absolute straight lines right behind his hand, because they are actually being pressed as well. So there's a lot of things to consider when painting a guitar. I think it definitely helps having the painting sideways. Don't be afraid to do this if you're working on something awkward that it would be easier to do if it was the other way around. Just change your painting around. It's definitely something I do if I'm trying to create something very precise with straight edges. So I'm tempted to continue with a pastel pencil, to be honest, because I just can't see how I'm going to get the lines to be precise enough if I use a soft pastel stick. Just don't think it's going to be possible. So I'm going to come in with the peach colour next. And just looking back at my photo reference, looking at where this string cuts through. And you're better to move slower if you're trying to be precise. So making a very fast line here won't help me, I don't think. Being really slow and deliberate with my mark. And I can narrow the string, I can work at it from the other side now as well. I'm just going to continue the string into the shadow but using the grey. Trying to get it to match up like it's the same string but just changing colour because we go into the shadow. And then an extra bit of highlight along this string, bringing the highlight right up to the shadow but not into it. And I'm not going to use the ruler here, but I just want to help myself line up where that string should come out from behind this hand. And the string itself is just a little bit above the shadow, so we've actually got a gap between the string and its shadow. So if I can leave a bit of a gap, that would be great. And when that string comes out from behind the hand, it really continues uninterrupted by any other shadows right across. Just its own shadow running underneath it. So just continue like this. I've got the strings pretty much plotted out here where to start them, and I've just got to try and keep my hand steady and keep that line parallel with all of the others. And I'm allowing the strings to run right over the top of my frets. bringing it up to the edge of the shadow, and then again continuing into the shadow using the grey. So let's get the next string. And I'm just looking at where the highlight starts on the string and the distance from the string to its shadow. So yeah, think about here. And the string also cuts through the little diamond pattern. So it's certainly a bit easier working this way around. It helps me a lot to make these marks a little bit more vertically than bringing them from left to right on the paper. And then again, where the string dips into the shadow, let's make that the dark grey again, or the mid-tone grey. And again, just shaping the string from the other side as well using the brown pencil. And then an extra bit of highlight using my General's white. So the thickest string is this big top one that we're just coming to. I'm trying to make this string just a little bit thicker than the others. And then the final string should be the thickest of them all. So just looking at where the strings come out on the other side. And I'm finding this peach colored pencil actually pretty good. There's a lot of warmth on the underside of the strings actually could be coming from the colour of the hands, from the colour of the warm guitar neck. So although they're metal and probably more like grey colours, they're reflecting quite a lot of warmth, and that's why I'm using this warmer coloured pencil just to get them in first, and then coming across them with the highlights. As well as neatening up the shadows, how they fit with their shadows, making sure that they run nice and parallel to the shadow. So I can just shave little bits off the shadows here using the brown pencils. I'm not sure if it'll come out on the audio, but I've got a singing cat outside my window. That's not me making those noises, if you can hear that in the background. Very strange warbled singing going on there. So just to let you know, that is a cat outside my window. So again, just affecting the width of the strings here. Trying to make them a little narrower in some places. And finally the big string at the bottom, and it's almost touching its shadow. We're not seeing much of the brown guitar through that. And I'm leaning a bit heavier with this string so that I make a wider mark. So I'm really squeezing the pencil onto the paper there. So as soon as you let any of these lines go just a little bit wonky, it really starts to, well, look a bit too wonky. So a lot of fixing up to do, a lot of small adjustments to do to try and get it to look right. Definitely not an easy thing to paint. And I think with this string I'm going to pick up my ruler again just to check it, because it's starting to look a little bit wonky, and I just want to check where and how far it's going off. So yeah, we've got a bit of a bulge happening here. Just want to try and adjust that. So we try the same again now with the highlight. We'll just run the white pencil again, trying to aim for the near to the top of the string. On this one it might be possible to show that because it's a bit thicker. It's just difficult to get somewhere to lean. Yeah, I'm going to give myself a little bit of ruled line here. I'm never against using a ruler if it's something that really can benefit from it. It doesn't bother me. It's just not always easy to make use of a ruler, but in this case I feel like I'm going to be able to just add this little slither of highlight down here, and it's going to help just tighten the overall look of this a little, which it could do with that, because with something as precise as guitar strings, it's just really hard to get them to look right. And once I've got that guide on there, then I can come back in freehand again, but it definitely helps just to get a little guide using the ruler. So I'm just trying to find this little shadow area again. Clean off my white and try and strengthen this bit of highlight here just on the other side of the thumb. And I'm just looking at where to bring that highlight across to. So just trying to create the little area of shadow on that string, the big fat string at the top here, and just where we've got a bit of shadow being cast from the thumb. So yeah, I'm getting there now. This is definitely something that I could spend many hours working on to get right, but I also have to remind myself that I'm actually making a hand demo here. It's not a guitar painting demo. The guitar was supposed to be the background, but that's what happens sometimes with backgrounds. You want to include something and then you realize, oh well, that's going to take longer to paint than the main subject. So that is just the nature of painting backgrounds sometimes. You get tied up in the detail there before you even get to the main focus of the painting. So I'm going to turn it round the right way again and let's see where we're at. Looks a bit strange this way up, so let's see. So the right way around is not too bad. Definitely difficult to get the detail on something like this to look precise. Those strings and frets are so precise. They're never going to look quite as precise as that in my painting, but if I can get it close, I'll be happy enough. So I can come in now and strengthen some highlights. Especially on the frets themselves. So using a little bit of blue pastel pencil now, I'm going to add a little bit of reflected light onto the wooden parts of the guitar. So we're outside in the sunlight. There are colours bouncing around off everything. To me it looks very flat at the moment with just the brown colours. I'm kind of using the grain of the wood to make my marks here. So I think this is helping just to add a bit of texture to the guitar, to bring a hint of the sunlight in here with these little reflections.